Woof woof! Hey guys, it's me Marcus, aka the Mad Dog, and I cannot believe that we are already at 250 subscribers. That's absolutely crazy to me, and I'm going to say a bit more about it at the end, but this video was going to be the first ever video that I was going to publish on this channel. It's how I got into comics, but for some reason I just couldn't seem to film it. I kept stuttering all the time, I kept losing my train of thought, and I'm not really going to get into the reason why here. I'm going to wait till the end so you can actually watch the video, but that's where you're going to see my clothes change, that's where you're going to see the background change, and I'll see you at the end. But enjoy. Woof woof! Hey all you mad dogs, hope you're all keeping safe. Thank you for watching this video. I thought it'd be nice just now that I've got the channel a bit up and running to sit down, talk with you one-on-one and talk about how I actually got into comics. What were sort of the pivotal moments, the pivotal books throughout my life that led to me being on YouTube talking about it now even though I'm 26. And it's weird because a lot of people when they talk about how they got into comics, they can quote one book or they can quote one moment that sort of defined that decision to pursue with this hobby, but I particularly can't. There were so many different factors that I felt ended up guiding me towards getting into this hobby rather than there being one book that just completely changed my life. The books that I'm going to quote, if I didn't read the books before or after it, I still don't think it would have led to me being here today. But there was a very clear starting point where this chain of events occurred, and without it happening I don't believe anything else would have gone on. Because even as a kid, even as a baby, there was one show in particular, one show that just completely changed the course of my life forever. And yes, of course, I am talking about the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I loved this show, I still do. I used to have a second YouTube channel where I talked exclusively about Power Rangers. I loved Power Rangers so much, I tuned into it every day. I could have watched it 24 hours a day, 365 days a year and still not be bored. When the Power Rangers the movie videotape came out, I actually burnt through 2 separate copies of this because I watched it that much. Power Rangers was my life, from the costumes to the weapons to the Zords to the monsters. Everything creative that I've done or tried to do throughout my life has somehow been influenced by Power Rangers, and in particular my decision to eventually get into comics. Now you're probably thinking that it was those very early Power Rangers comics that came out that eventually got me into comics, but of course not, no it wasn't. What actually got me into comics as a result of Power Rangers was the fact that it was only available on one show in the UK. If you're in the UK and you watch Power Rangers, you know exactly what TV channel I'm talking about because it was Fox Kids, and it was the best channel that was around. They had so many great shows beyond just Power Rangers. They had Beetleborgs, they had VR Troopers, they had Masked Rider, and the main one was they had the SpiderMan animated show and the X-Men animated show. It'd often be the case that Power Rangers was always on after this show, and there was one time where I tuned in really early because I was one of those kids that didn't want to miss the introduction to Power Rangers even though I'd seen it every single day of my life. And one day I tuned in so early that I happened to catch the end of the Spider-Man show that was just before it. And it was during the Venom saga, and in particular it was the episode where at the end you see Spider-Man finally get the black suit, and I just needed to know what had happened. I needed to know what had happened before that, I needed to know what had happened after that, and I actually almost forgot that I was waiting to watch Power Rangers because I was so interested in this new show. So the next day of course I started watching an hour early, and then there was this show before it called X-Men, and the first character that I saw on the X-Men cartoon was the character that is still my favourite X-Men today. But the first X-Men that I saw in this show was Colossus, this man-mountain, this absolute beast made of metal, and he was Russian. He had red, he had silver, he had yellow, he had all these vibrant colours that me as a kid just absolutely loved. Colossus was everything that I wanted to see in a superhero. So now as a kid I had this X-Men show that I had to keep up with, I had this Spider-Man show to keep up with, and then I had Power Rangers to keep up with as well. But each day I just found myself watching it more and more and trying to learn as much of these characters as I could because I couldn't go on the internet this time. I didn't really have a library of stuff that I could go to, and my dad and my mum weren't really interested in this as well. And I didn't really have any friends growing up, so there wasn't anybody that I could ask to know who these characters were in the X-Men show, so I was solely reliant on watching these shows to get this information that I wanted. And as well, because I was quite young and no one around me had any information on it, I didn't connect the dots that these shows were actually based on comics before them. However, my dad was slowly starting to introduce me into it because he could see that I was interested in these shows. And for anybody that doesn't know, here in the UK we only really have 2 main chains of comic book shops and then a few independent ones. So the first comic book chain that we've got is called Forbidden Planet, and the second comic book chain that we got is called Forbidden Planet. Yeah, it's weird, out of all the names that we could have had, the only 2 main chains of comics in the UK happen to be named the exact same thing. But where I'm from in Stoke-on-Trent, there was a Forbidden Planet in Hanley, and me and my dad always used to go up there because, like I said, I was an only child, so if they went shopping and my mum wanted to go into like a girly clothes shop, he took me into the comic shop and we'd look around there. And that was my exposure to comics until the year 2005 when absolutely everything changed. There's a UK magazine company called Eagle Moss that created something that just happened to open the door door completely to me entering the comic universe, and that is the classic Marvel figurine collection. This was a fortnightly series that once every 2 weeks he'd come out with a little miniature statue and a magazine about the relevant character. It started off with all your obvious ones like your Spider-Man, your Wolverine, your Captain America, and then as the series went on it did some of the more obscure characters. But I absolutely loved this because I could get it from the paper shop without having to go down to Forbidden Planet. So I'd get it once every fortnight, I'd collect me little statues and I'd put them on my shelves, and I would devour all these books. I'd read them cover to cover, just learning everything that I could about the character. They did eventually follow up with a DC Comics one as well that I collected, and I remember in particular that every couple of months they would do an oversized figure. So you'd have your standard size ones which were about 2 or 3 inches, and then they would come out for a massive one. The first one was the Hulk, and the second one, which came at a staggering £10, was Colossus. I needed this. I remember just doing so many chores around the house just so I could get enough money to get it. And then luckily my dad just surprised me with it anyway, because he just heard me going on about Colossus so much that he just wanted me to shut up. I remember the cover so vividly, and I can see the statue as if it's here in my hands right now. It told me everything that I needed to know about Colossus, to the point where I'd felt like I'd read all these comics even though I hadn't even touched one yet. But that's when I started high school, and the thing that carried over from primary school into high school was the fact that I got bullied. I didn't have any friends, I was an easy target, and I didn't like football, which immediately meant that meant I was the victim. And weirdly enough, I got associated as a comic nerd, as a comic geek, even though I hadn't read any of them. Of course, I still loved all these shows, and at this point the SpiderMan movie had come out and the X-Men movie had come out, so they were a bit more in pop culture than before. But a lot of people don't remember this, but it wasn't like it is now. It wasn't cool to like comics. It didn't give you a good reputation, so I was actually at like the lowest rank of the social hierarchy within school because I looked like someone who might read comics. And then weirdly, as if it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, I remember going, well, if people think that I'm into this, I might as well see what it is. So I went onto the school computer and I literally typed, "Can I read comics anywhere?" And the first website that popped up was something that was literally just called Read Comics. Not the website Read Comics, who's a very reputable business. It was some kind of pirate site that I wasn't even aware of existed as a kid. And I know now obviously that yeah, pirating is bad, but I was only about 11 or 12 at that point, and I was just so desperate to learn more about this thing that apparently I was associated with. So I went on this Read Comics site, and the first comic that I ever actually read, the first comic that I looked at past the initial front cover, was Superman Batman. And this is why this is my most anticipated omnibus of this year, because there's so many good memories that come from it. It had this big massive Ed McGuinness art, it was Superman, it was Batman, they were fighting Lex Luthor, they were fighting the Joker, everything about this was amazing. And at that point I didn't care if I was the comic geek, I actually love these things now. I was like, you know what, I will gladly own this title if it means that I get this kind of secret knowledge into this weird sort of medium that apparently nobody else really knows about. Because everybody knew what comics were, but they didn't really know how good they were. So I was reading comics left, right and centre. We didn't even have the internet at my mum and dad's house at this point, so I went to the library every break and every dinner so that I could read comics through this pirating website. And I just stuck with the Superman Batman run for the most part. And my high school library was weird because they had 3 comics. I think the first one was like a RoboCop comic, the second one was Green Lantern Predator, and the third one was John Byrne's Man of Steel. And I still remember seeing that cover where he's clearly just opening up his shirt so you can see the Superman symbol beneath, and I remember renting this out from the library. And honestly, this was such a great jumping on point for comics, because comics get the rep that they are quite weirdy when you look at them from the 80s or 70s and before that. But as this was like one of my first comics that I actually sat down and read, I didn't really mind, and it told me everything that I needed to know about Superman, and I actually loved the character of Superman himself and of Clark Kent. That's why when I see people say that he's boring or that he shouldn't really have many main stories written about him anymore, I get really defensive about it, because John Byrne's Superman taught me that you can write a great Superman story, and he's such an important comic character. He was technically like the first comic character across the 2 main comics that I've read now. But then I started researching into comics as a whole, and this is where I ended up starting to actually want to invest in them. Because I remember hearing stories about people being able to sell issues of Spider-Man #1 for thousands and thousands of pounds, Superman #1 for thousands and thousands of pounds, and I had £10 of Christmas money that year. So me and my dad went up to Forbidden Planet, and I remember for weeks before that there was a comic in the window in one of those spin racks that was something like Spider-Man issue 1. And in my dumb child brain I remember thinking that this was the first issue of Spider-Man, and for some reason I didn't really know what it was worth, so it was just worth £10 in Forbidden Planet in Hanley. So with £10 in my pocket and my eyes lined up on Spider-Man #1, I ended up buying it. And you're probably wondering right now, what did I buy? It was this. It's the first trade paperback of Ultimate Spider-Man, and this is still the copy that I bought back in 2005. I remember after I wrote it and I showed my mum because I was really excited and I told her that she could retire from work, she sat me down and told me that I should know that this isn't the first issue of Spider-Man and it's probably not going to be worth much money. I wish she would have told me that if I read this it's going to get me into a hobby that's going to cost me thousands, but here we are today. But I remember being so happy when I brought this and I finally had a comic, because my mum and dad didn't think I was actually going to keep buying them. They thought it was just I thought this was going to be worth millions. So once I realised that I was still going to have to go to school on Monday, I ended up cracking this open and reading it, and I absolutely just fell in love with it. The art was so crazy. I hadn't really seen anything like this before, and it was Spider-Man, a character that I'd loved since I was a kid, but it was his origin story. This was like the perfect jumping on point for anyone, and if I was to do a series that was like the best beginner comics, this would definitely be one of them, because I always associate this with the first comic that I ever actually read, because it was the first one that I ever actually invested my time and my money into. So yeah, even though it is technically Superman, Batman or John Byrne's Man of Steel, this is always the first comic that I associate with my comic history. But from there I only exclusively continued to read Ultimate Spider-Man, and I did try to branch into the other Ultimate lines at that point, but it was still always Spider-Man that had my main attention, and I didn't really branch into anything else. However, me and my dad kept going up to Forbidden Planet on a near weekly basis because he kept having so many of these rare Marvel Classic figurine collections. I remember when I was like 12 or 13, I kept buying the Red Phoenix variant and I just kept selling it for like 3 or 4 times the price. Yeah, I know I was a dirty scalper, but as a kid that was money so that I could buy more comics. So I, at that stage, was already looking at this as ways that I can end up branching out and making money as a result of it. They also had the Blue Angel variant and they had the Grey Hulk, and they kept just getting them in. And Forbidden Planet never kept asking why this 13-year-old boy kept buying 4 Red Phoenixes at the same time. But as we were leaving one day, there was a certain book that I saw. It was a hardback, and I never really noticed any of the books as I was leaving if it wasn't Ultimate Spider-Man. But I recognised this from one of my Marvel figurine collection magazines, and I remember being obsessed with the image. It was so dark, it was so gritty, it was so real, and with the profit that I'd already made from selling some of the Marvel figurine collection, I ended up buying it, and that book turned out to be Daredevil by Brian Michael Bendis Volume 3. This cover is so important to me. I absolutely love it. This is the reason why I brought the omnibus, because it's not zoomed in, and if I could get a poster of this that's got some kind of like certificate of authenticity, I probably would. I absolutely love this image. It means so much to me and it was so cool. And then I ended up reading the book and I realised something pretty quickly. This is the same dude who wrote Ultimate Spider-Man. I remember thinking that this dude wrote every book because he seemed to be in every book that I was picking up. But what a massive jump it was going from just Ultimate Spider-Man to Daredevil. This truly opened my eyes to what comics could be, and I think if it wasn't for Daredevil by Brian Michael Bendis, I would not be reading comics now. I didn't even have any of the early volumes and I didn't even really care, but this book was just everything that I wanted to be, and this ended on that absolutely amazing cliffhanger with the confrontation between Daredevil and Kingpin. And at this stage, at this very moment, I knew that I didn't just want to read comics, I need to read comics. This is how good they are. This is something that nobody else really knows too much about, and I can be the guy that sort of has this secret from the world. So yeah, I was a comic geek, but you know what? I did not care because I got to read these great stories that nobody else knew about. And everybody in my school was still in this belief that if you like comics that you're a little kid and you should be back in primary school. Didn't listen to any of that, and I just kept reading and I was slowly branching out. I didn't have too much money and I ended up taking on a paper round so that I could get more money to buy more comics, and here and there I ended up picking up an extra book, and I kept trying to build my Daredevil collection in particular. I remembered going back and trying to read some of the very early Spider-Man and Fantastic Fours like through the omnibuses, but it wasn't really just for me, and I think this is when I was really learning what type of style that I like and what type of writing interests me. And for all the names that I've already thrown about and for all the people that have had some role in getting me into comics, there was one thing in particular that I remember being the actual turning point in me going, I want a comic collection. It was either 2008 or 2009, but there was one trailer that came out that just made me think that comics was something absolutely incredible. And that was the trailer for Zack Snyder's Watchmen. We all remember how stylistic this was, and I knew absolutely nothing about Watchmen going into it. But I genuinely thought it was a story about Batman if he didn't have money, because I remember seeing Night Owl and going, yeah, he looks like Batman. And I didn't want to wait for this film to come out, so of course I ended up buying the book because it's Sky skyrocketed on Amazon to #1 and I thought that it was going to go completely out of print. This obviously is the absolute edition because I love this story so much, but I originally had the paperback, you know, the one with the yellow cover that seems to also be in the original absolute edition here. I remember seeing this cover and thinking that it might be something about going through space and time, and then I read it and it definitely wasn't. But I still loved every second of this, and the weird thing is, I don't think I actually understood what Watchmen was trying to say or what the plot of Watchmen was at the time when I was originally reading it. But for some reason, and I can't even think what it was in retrospective, this book just grabbed me. In my naivety, I was now learning that there was people in Britain that actually did write comics. So I ended up looking more into Alan Moore, and I ended up buying V for Vendetta. I ended up buying the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and from there that's when I ended up finding the website iFanboy, because they did an episode where they talked about Alan Moore, and I ended up watching that. Now iFanboy isn't in the same strength of power that it is now, which I think is a definite shame. iFanboy was one of the original internet comic shows, and it was great. I go back and watch some of their videos now and still find books that I forgot about, but Watchmen, Ultimate Spider-Man and Daredevil by Bendis, yeah, they cracked open the eggshell, but iFanboy proper ripped it open and allowed my yolk to become an omelette. That was when everything just went completely crazy, and on top of that there was a really cool dude at Forbidden Planet in Hanley that was sort of like comic book guy from The Simpsons, because if you said, oh I just read Watchmen, you'd be like, I read that 20 years ago. And if he recommended you a book and you read it and you came back and said you liked it, he'd just like somehow put it down and then tell you that there's a better book that you should read. And there was one book that he really recommended to me that's proper stuck with me, and I also think is influential to me getting into comics properly, and that was Preacher. I remember him showing me the cover and I didn't have a clue what it was about. It just looked like it was going to be some religious biblical crap and I just didn't want to read it. But he actually said to me that he will give me volume 1 and 2 only if when I go back there I buy the rest of the volumes from Forbidden Planet. And I remember reading volume 1 and thinking that this guy's not going to get his money back. And then I read volume 2 and I realised that this guy's probably the smartest dude that I can think of. And then weirdly when I went back I was like, oh I read it, I can't believe I've read something this good so young. And he just straight away went, yeah but I was reading 2000 AD when I was your age. But I listened to every recommendation that this guy had. He ended up showing me the Hellboy books even though I'd loved the films, and he kept doing that. He kept going, did you like this film? Oh well, here's the book. He showed me the Daredevil runs that came after the ones that I'd already read. He showed me the best SpiderMan runs. He showed me the best X-Men runs, the best Superman runs. He introduced me to Batman Hush, which is an absolute that I will probably never sell. I was then learning about all these different types of artists, and I just remember wanting to know more and more information as it went on. And at this point I kind of knew that this wasn't just going to be a hobby that I had whilst I was a teenager. This was something that is going to carry with me. It's the same as liking movies, it's the same as liking TV shows, it's the same as when I was writing books, it was the same as when I was reading books. I needed comics in my life and I knew that I was just going to be reading them forever. And at the same time, like I said, I was writing books. I was writing my own superhero stories called Zedalon, which was something that I originally wanted to make as a comic when I was 8, but I actually ended up writing a comic before I'd ever actually read one. So then as soon as I was reading a lot of comics, I realised that it was going to be really difficult to both write and draw a comic when you can't actually draw. So I ended up just writing that book, and I wanted to end up bringing people from the sort of realm of normies into the world of comics. I wanted Zedalon to be that book that would get people to realise the strength of superhero storytelling. But then the MCU happened, everybody suddenly knows what comics are, and you get people talking down to you about comics even though they've never read one. And honestly, that's kind of what led me to making this channel. Now yeah, I love the MCU films and I'll watch all the DC films, and anything that's comic related I will always give a chance. But the thing is, I loved reading comics more than I actually loved watching comic media. So I was reading stuff like Green Lantern by Jeff Johns, and everybody was saying Green Lantern was shit because of the Ryan Reynolds movie. And I remember wanting to talk about the X-Men and Colossus, and people only knew him because he was in Deadpool 2. It's a bit sad but understandable that so few people actually pay attention to the source material of these films that they absolutely claim to love. So that's honestly why I've started this channel. I wanted something where I could talk about the books that I've really enjoyed and, you know, give suggestions to people if you're getting into comics, and just have somewhere where I can just build my enjoyment for this hobby even further. But it's because I need this outlet. I need somewhere where I can just be myself, where I can talk about everything that I enjoy and hopefully have a positive reaction and maybe even influence someone to pick up a title that they might enjoy. Yeah, so that was originally what I planned to do as my first ever video, but then of course I wanted to do a haul as well, and that seemed to have gained a bit more traction, so I put that one out first, and then this video just kept falling by the wayside. But because we've already hit this massive milestone, I wanted to honour it, and I've put this video out now and hopefully you've all enjoyed it. And I said at the beginning that I was going to talk about why I didn't upload this video originally and why I didn't think think it was going to work, and I think honestly it's because I had this fear that nobody wanted to listen to what I had to say. I thought with a haul, of course people might watch because they want to see books that you've brought, but when it's just me sat down in front of the camera talking to you about something that's interesting in my life, I didn't know if anybody would be bothered. Who knows, maybe nobody's watching it to this point and I was correct all along. But I'm just blown away by the support that this channel's already had. I remember when I started this channel that I thought if I worked really hard and I just got good quality videos out for the rest of the year, that by the end of 2020 I might hit 100 subscribers. But we've already blown that out of the water and we're already now at 250. That's mental to me because in the past I've had 2 other YouTube channels and they both seem to slowly fizzle out and die. I'm hoping that isn't going to be the case with here because I love when I put a video up and I see you guys sharing it, I see you guys commenting on it, and I can interact and talk with you about it. And I just hope that continues because this is Mad Dog Comics and Entertainment. I like talking about stuff that interests me. I don't want to put up videos just because I feel like a video has to go up. I want to put up a video because I enjoy doing it and I feel like somebody might enjoy watching it. So I've said it before and I'll say it again, but that's my work ethic when it comes to this channel. I don't care if I have to go an extra day without a video being on the channel, if I work a day extra on that video and it ends up being much better. Because there's many words that people might use to describe this channel, you know, people might even think it's boring, people might think I'm annoying, but one thing I don't want them to think is that this channel is lazy. I'm not just going to churn out content just so that there's something to watch, just so that I can get my views up and get my watch hours up. Every video that I put on this channel is something that I've enjoyed and that I genuinely think is something that you might want to watch. So it's nice that now I finally have the confidence to bring this video out and tell you all how I got into comics, because there was a time literally 2 months ago where I thought nobody would care. And again, it is all mainly due to the support of all you dogs out there. Everybody that's subscribed already, clicked the bell notification, liked the video, commented on it, followed me on Instagram, and I love as well when people are sharing my channel on their Instagram pages. That's just mental to me. Like, it does really just give me hope that I've got something good with this channel and that we'll continue to grow, we'll continue to build, I'll improve my editing skills and I'll upgrade the technology that I've got around here, and that Mad Dog Comics becomes something that's quite reputable, that you know when one of my videos goes out, you know that there's effort put into it. Even the videos that haven't done too well, like my first manga, you can still watch that now and know that quality went into it. You know that I sat down at my computer and I edited that until I knew that it was right to get uploaded. And that's always going to be the mentality, whether a video ends up getting 100 views or 1 view, it's always going to have that same quality control. But again, I just want to thank you all for supporting the channel so far, and I hope that I can continue bringing out good videos that you'll enjoy and that the support will just continue to grow. It's crazy that we're already halfway to 500 subscribers, and I've said it before that once we hit that milestone, I'm going to do a live stream with you so that I can talk to you all and, you know, we can just discuss things in person a bit better. Who knows, with the way this channel's going, that might be sooner rather than later, and I'm looking forward to that as well. That's something else that I can expand into. I've said before I'm working on a script for a Heroes retrospective that might end up taking over an hour or maybe even over 2 hours, because it's something that I enjoy and I think it might bring entertainment to you guys. I also want to branch off and do like a Batman accurate comic portrayal of the Batman Telltale games and the other Telltale games and stuff like that, just so I can get more content to you guys and vary it up at the same time so that hopefully you'll still be entertained. And I've also wanted to branch into like creator specific things, so I wanted to do like a massive documentary on Alan Moore. I also wanted to do a drinking game that was like, did Alan Moore really say this? And you know, just interesting facts about creators that you might not have known, some books that might have fallen by the wayside. I've got so many ideas for this channel, and every time I upload a video and you guys comment on it, or when someone new subscribes and I get an email about it, it just makes me feel so happy, and it makes me think that, you know, I've got something here, and it gives me that motivation to continue pushing the boundary. I don't just want to do the same video that every other comic channel on here is doing. I want to push the boat out a little bit. Yeah, it might mean that nobody watches the video, but I would rather know that I tried my best and maybe got something entertaining to one of you guys than just not do it and know that I'm coasting by doing the same thing as everybody else. I just hope that comes across in the content, and I hope there's a kind of level of authenticity that comes across in the videos. But I'm going to wrap this up here. I could end up thanking you guys for over an hour if I was given the chance to, and to be fair, you guys deserve it for just supporting me from the beginning. But if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't like this video, why did you get this far? If you haven't subscribed already and you just happen to be tuning into a milestone video, please click that subscribe button and click that bell notification. You get to become a part of the Dog Pound. Just remember to check out some of my other links here. I always put stuff in my stories on Instagram, and more than anything, just remember to stay safe, keep reading, and keep barking all you mad dogs, and I'll see you next time.